In the year 1340, a young noblewoman named Inês de Castro arrived in Portugal as a lady in waiting to a Castilian princess named Constanza. Constanza had just married the heir to the Portuguese throne, a prince named Pedro. Inês was not the one Pedro was supposed to fall for. She was supposed to simply serve his new wife. Instead, Pedro became completely infatuated with her almost immediately. This was a serious problem. Inés's family had deep political ties to Castile, the very kingdom Portugal was constantly trying to balance power against. A prince falling in love with her wasn't just a personal scandal, it was a political threat. Pedro didn't care. He continued pursuing Inés even while still married, and the affair became impossible to hide. When Constanza died in 1345, most of the court assumed Pedro would quickly remarry for political reasons, the way royal heirs were expected to. He didn't. Instead, he and Inés began living together openly, and they had several children together over the following years. This made Pedro's father, King Afonso IV, increasingly anxious. Inés's brothers had also grown close to Pedro, gaining real influence at court. The king feared that Castile's interests were creeping into Portugal's own royal family through this relationship, and that it could eventually threaten the independence of the kingdom itself. In January of 1355, while Pedro was away on a hunting trip, King Afonso made his decision. He sent 3 men to the monastery where Inés was staying with her children. Accounts differ on the exact method. Some say she was stabbed, others say beheaded, but all agree it happened quickly and in front of her own children. When Pedro returned and learned what his father had done, he was consumed by grief and rage. He raised an army and prepared to march against his own father's kingdom. His mother, Queen Beatrice, begged him to stop, terrified of a civil war between father and son. Pedro reluctantly agreed to stand down, but he made it clear to anyone who would listen that he would never forgive his father, and he never did. 2 years later, in 1357, King Afonso died of natural causes, and Pedro finally ascended to the throne. His very first act as king was revenge. He tracked down 2 of the 3 men responsible for Inés's death. The third had fled the country entirely. According to several historical accounts, Pedro personally watched as the hearts were torn from their chests, reportedly declaring that since they had torn his own heart out, they had no right to keep theirs. Then Pedro made an announcement that shocked the entire royal court. He claimed that years earlier, he and Inés had secretly married, with a bishop's blessing, making her, even in death, the legitimate Queen of Portugal. Here is where documented history and legend begin to separate. It is well recorded that Pedro publicly declared this marriage and legally legitimized his children with Inés as royal heirs, securing their place in the line of succession. But the most famous image associated with this story, that Pedro had Inés's body exhumed from her grave, dressed in full royal robes, crowned and seated upon the throne, while terrified nobles were forced to kneel and kiss her decomposing hand, does not appear anywhere in surviving records from the years immediately after it supposedly happened. The earliest known written version of that specific scene appears in a play published in 1577, more than 2 centuries after Inés died. Many historians today believe the corpse coronation was a dramatic invention added long after the fact, designed to make an already tragic true story even more unforgettable. What is absolutely certain is this. Pedro had Inés's remains moved to the Grand Royal Monastery at Alcobaça and commissioned an elaborate, ornately carved marble tomb for her. He then ordered his own tomb, built directly facing hers, foot to foot, an arrangement that was anything but accidental. According to the religious belief of the period, on Judgment Day the dead would rise from their graves, facing whatever direction their tomb pointed. Pedro wanted to guarantee that the very first thing he saw, when he rose again, would be Inés's face. Their 2 tombs still sit facing one another today, inside that same monastery, exactly as he ordered, more than 650 years later. So was the corpse actually crowned and forced to receive the loyalty of a kingdom? Historians still genuinely disagree, but the forbidden love, the brutal murder, and the merciless revenge that followed are real, thoroughly documented medieval history. The crown on a corpse, might simply be the legend's way of making sure nobody ever forgot how far Pedro's grief actually went. Did you know about this story before today? Let me know in the comments.